Forsen, which of these are you currently residing in?
Hello, and welcome back to another Daily Top 10's Top 10 video. Today, we're going to be looking at the top 10 horrifying mental asylums. There's a reason that the insane asylum has become a cliche in horror films. A lot of horrifying things have happened at them over the years. We've rounded up a list of 10 of the worst. Number 10, Overbrook Insane Asylum. This New Jersey asylum was shut down in the mid-1970s, but not before traumatizing and torturing many of its patients. Overbrook had way too many patients for its skeleton staff to look after, those of them that were interested in looking after people, that is. During the early 20th century, conditions were so awful that a number of patients froze to death in their beds. Others went AWOL and were never seen again. Number 9, Willowbrook State School. If you've ever seen the American Horror Story Asylum television series, you may recognize some of the traits of Willowbrook. This Staten Island lockup served as infamous child killer. A Peabody Award-winning investigation revealed a lot of the more appalling details, but you'll be shocked to hear that this place is open to this day, though its conditions have vastly improved. Number 8, Poveglia Island Asylum. Stories from this asylum in Venice, Italy are shrouded in a mess of fact and fiction. One thing is certain, it got off to a bad start. It was a strange person indeed who came up with the idea of building a mental institution on an island most famous for being a quarantine station for people dying of the Black Plague. The patients that later made up the asylum's population reported seeing the ghosts of those plague victims, but their cries were ignored by hospital staff. One of the asylum's doctors, meanwhile, got into the habit of performing crude lobotomies with the aid of drills, hammers, and chisels. The rumor goes that this doctor was
an insane person is saying they're seeing ghosts. Yeah, of course. What would they expect the personnel to do?
Himself driven mad, claiming that he too could see the ghosts of plague carriers. He threw himself off the top of the hospital's bell tower, falling to his death below.
I can't play the piano. I sit weird when play the piano.
Busy. I can't play the piano. I sit weird when play the piano.
Play me a song. You're the piano man.
Number 7, Athens Lunatic Asylum. No, not Athens, Greece, Athens, Ohio. And this place had a real issue with women who dared to exhibit any kind of sexual desire. The doctors at Athens Lunatic Asylum diagnosed such women with hysteria and said they were sick thanks to what they called menstrual derangements. In order to treat this quote-unquote sickness, they froze, shocked, kicked, and occasionally lobotomized their patients.
Kicked.
And this place only ended
Kicked patients. That's the issue to the menstrual deranged whatever the fuck. Must be kicking. Like, these were doctors for this time. What the fuck?
ended up closing its doors in 1993.
What is the cure, doctor?
Number
8
6,
kicks.
Metropolitan State Hospital.
2 roundhouse.
Sedated children, poisoned pensioners. There are plenty of horrifying tales attributed to this hospital, but the most famous one demonstrates that there was an utter disregard for patient security and well-being. When a patient went for a walk around the hospital's prison-like grounds in 1978, she never returned and she couldn't be found. It wasn't until 2 years later that another patient, soon to be revealed as her killer, brought the police to the 3 graves that he had buried parts of her body across. He kept a hold of 7 of her teeth, giving this horrific asylum the nickname, the Hospital of 7 Teeth. Number 5. Trenton State Hospital. This asylum has become synonymous over the years with the infamous Kirkbride Plan, a mental hospital design scheme laid out in the 19th century by Philadelphian psychiatrist Thomas Kirkbride. The Kirkbride Plan advocates for big, spacious, light-filled halls which are supposed to offer patients more privacy and comfort. Unfortunately, many of the hospitals that took up this approach went on to become famed for their poor conditions. In fact, Trenton State Hospital, then known as the New Jersey State Lunatic Asylum, was the very first place founded on this plan. The medical abuses that took place there are many. At various points, patients' teeth, gallbladders, stomach, testicles, uteruses, and ovaries were removed by one Dr. Henry Cotton. The doctor believed that mental disorder was linked to bodily infections. Often, he didn't get the patient's consent. Often, the result of his experiments was death. Number 4. Danvers State Hospital. Another hospital built on Kirkbride's theories. Danvers State Hospital is said to be the inspiration for H.P. Lovecraft's Arkham Sanatorium, one of horror fiction's more famous locations. Unfortunately, there was nothing fictitious about the terrible events that happened in Danvers. Originally supposed to house 600 patients, by 1939 there were nearly 2,500, with no increase in staff. This meant that many patients died days before their bodies were discovered. Danvers also became the backdrop to the world's first transorbital lobotomy, in which an ice pick is inserted through the eye socket and into the brain. Number 3. Pennhurst Insane Asylum. Pennhurst was a place where when a child bit another child, he got a warning. When he did it again, he got his teeth removed. This asylum's reputation for child cruelty was built on the findings of investigative reporter Bill Baldini, who shone a light on the facility's widespread physical, mental, and sexual abuses. Number 2. Topeka State Hospital. By the 1960s, Topeka State Hospital had a reputation as a leading psychiatric facility, but that was not always the case. Accounts of the terrors experienced there are many, ranging from people being chained up naked for months on end.
If you're like 5 or whatever and you get your teeth pulled out, like all your teeth pulled out, you still get the second set of teeth, right? Even if you pull out with the root? Or where do the teeth actually grow from? Might grow crooked. They won't grow in evenly.
To tales of the excruciating, mind-numbing boredom patients underwent.
Don't grow?
There was no effort.
They grow from the roots, right? I don't know. I wonder how that works.
At the hospital to stimulate patients' bodies or minds. Worst of all was the story recounted by a journalist that visited the hospital in the early 20th century. He encountered a patient who had been strapped down so long that his skin had started to grow over his restraints. Number 1.
What
Bethlehem.
the fuck?
Its name may be the Bethlehem Royal Hospital, but it became more famous for its nickname, Bedlam. Originally owned by monks and opened in 1247, Bedlam eventually started taking in homeless unfortunates with psychiatric issues. No one knew much about treating mental problems back then, so daily punishments, scripture lessons, and chaining people to walls seemed the way to go. By the time the British government took over in the mid-19th century, there were people who had been locked up for 20 years or more. But things didn't improve. The staff weren't trained, conditions were filthy, patients without money were starved, and an inspection in 1598 said that Bedlam was not fit for any man to dwell in. 30-odd years later, the whole place was closed, a new hospital was opened, and things began to get really bad. Patients were treated like prisoners in a zoo. Bedlam was open to the public, and rich people gave patients pennies so they might perform songs and dances. Future managers encouraged beatings, cold baths, and torture, prompting a 19th century Parliament inquiry and 2 more changes of location. 750 years on from opening its doors, Bedlam is still going, improved but with a controversial history that won't and shouldn't disappear.
So there you
Thanks
have
for
it.
watching
That's where
another
I am.
Daily Top.
This is where we have this green screen room. One of my roommates.
If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like and a comment of what you want to see next.